The Mavic 3 is the latest flex from a company that does not appear to be slowing down. DJI has been on a roll lately, and while the Mavic 3 is pretty phenomenal, it's not quite ready for launch. Things like active track and master shots aren't ready, and they're coming at a software update in January. Still, for every negative this drone threw at me, its camera picked up the slack, and it is phenomenal. I mean, 5K video, 12.8 stops of dynamic range, Hasselblad color science. There's a lot to love here, but is it the drone for most people? I don't really think so. So stick with me. I'm Bennett with Mobile Syrup, and we're gonna find out. Before we get really into who this drone is for, let's look at the most exciting aspect of the Mavic 3, which is, of course, its new camera sensor. Or sensors, I guess. Anyway, both use the same well-regarded Hasselblad color science, but realistically, most people are only here because of that main 4/3 optic. Unless you want to be a creep, I guess. But we'll get more into that later, and I'm really hoping that more people are here for the camera aspects. I digress. This 4/3 sensor is a large sensor for a drone this size, and it allows for some really amazing high dynamic range, 5.1K video at 30 FPS, 4K video at 60 FPS, 20 megapixel photos, and a lot more. There really isn't much to be disappointed about once you get this drone up in the sky. It very easily proves its worth. You know, it's even got phenomenal low light performance. On the day that daylight savings time hit, I misjudged when sunset was because, I don't know, I wasn't ready. And when I got to the park to fly, and the whole time driving there, it was just getting darker and darker. And it was too dark to fly when I got there. So you can fly this drone at night because it has all the lights on it. So I shot it up, but I couldn't see anything on the display, whatever. Snapped a single photo, and it turned out to probably be my favorite photo from this entire review process. Since then, I've also seen some other footage from YouTubers flying at night, and with a quick pass of noise reduction, this drone can capture quite usable nightscape videos, at least in cities with some light on the ground. I think the same goes for photos as well in my experience. You also have a lot of control over this main camera with fully manual options like aperture, shutter speed, and ISO. Plus, the drone is designed so you can physically attach ND filters to the front of it, and they lock in place quite securely. So once you're flying, you have a lot of control over your shots, just like you would with a regular camera. I will mention though that the ND filters only come with the Fly More or the Cine bundle, or you can buy them on your own. Finally, I'll mention that I really like the range I can pull out of the raw DNG image files or even the D-Log video, and the fact that I can take giant 5,280 by 3,956 pixel images is really nice to edit with. You can crop in quite a bit. So just combining that with the quality of the sensor gives you a lot of room to play around in post. It's really awesome. The other camera is a 7x telephoto zoom lens, and well, it's passable compared to the beautiful sharpness that is the regular lens. It's not, it's not the perfect photography tool, probably more of a side feature. DJI even labels it as Explore mode. However, I will say if you want to get this retro helicopter look from the 90s, this drone kind of does it. It can also zoom in all the way to 28x, but at that point, it's definitely more of a tool to explore and look around rather than a usable camera for photography. It's not, the worst, but it is a bit weird, and it feels, I'm gonna be honest, it feels very creepy to be even able to zoom in that far for no real photography reason. I've seen some people say, oh, we can location scout with it, but it's like, do you need to zoom in that far? At one point, I was just cycling through the zooms, and all of a sudden I was like staring in someone's face on their balcony, who knows how many hundreds of feet away, and I didn't mean to. It was very weird. I felt awkward. They didn't know I was watching them. I zoomed out of there, no harm done really, but it was still just a weird experience, a bit shocking. I felt like I was crying, and I have no need to ever go to 28 other than like it's just the fastest way to cycle back to 1 from 7. So maybe DJI can fix that. Overall though, the footage and images, they speak for themselves. This drone is very slick. However, I will say that once you get a drone like the Mini 2 up as high as the Mavic 3, which is very easily, they fly the same ranges, the playing field levels out unless you really need HDR. With drone photography or even videography, a lot of it is just about that unique perspective that we can't get with like the human eye unless we're in a plane, so that extra sharpness from the Mavic 3 comes into effect a little less. Anyway, before we get into that, let's just talk about the rest of the fun facts, and then we'll finally wrap this all up. I don't know why I called these fun facts earlier. These are just some quick facts I noticed in my time with the drone. One, it's got a nice startup sound, pretty catchy. It can raise and lower itself very quickly in sport mode. The obstacle avoidance tech and the distance warnings on the controller are very helpful and make flying this drone way easier than any of the other DJI ones I've flown in the past. The bag it comes with is unreal and can be turned into a backpack. That being said, you probably don't want to be using it on long hikes, and you want to be switching your drone into something comfier, because as cool as the bag is, it's not very comfy and like kills your shoulders. Back to the drone, the gimbal locks so it doesn't rattle around during transport. This is pretty cool. There is a cover to go on it, but it's a bit safer than some of the other DJI drones. It's using the same controller, that means it has the same range as the Mini 2, the Air 2S, some of its competitors. So unless you want to spend an extra $1,000 or buy the super inexpensive Cine bundle, you're not going to get that expansive 15-kilometer range. Also, the charger will only charge one battery at a time. However, the battery life is really great on this bird, so really no complaints in the battery department. I will complain about the 8 gigabytes of internal storage. That's kind of BS for a drone this price. Like, I know most people will probably be using SD cards, that's what I did, but for when you're spending, $2,000 on a drone, you should get 32 gigs or at least 64. The DJI Action 2 even has 32 gigs, and it's like a $200 camera this big. It's also missing some, maybe I'm getting a little ahead of myself. Should we just jump into the negatives? Beyond the slowish charger and the tiny bit of internal memory, DJI has overpromised and underdelivered in a few other departments with this new Mavic drone. So it's sitting at about 85% complete until we get this software update that's coming in January apparently. So this means for you that master shots, quick shots, and active tracking are all disabled on this drone until then. There's this nagging thought in the back of my mind that the company just needed to get the Mavic 3 out now so that maybe it didn't release too closely to the next, likely more wallet-friendly upgrade that's coming down the pipeline to probably replace the Mini 2 or maybe even the Air 2S. Or, maybe it's just trying to double dip in the news cycle, or, it might not have just had the features ready. Who knows? It's just a little weird. I want to hold out faith that the features will be worthwhile, but it's a bit sketch they didn't make the full release. So if you're running a small crew that could benefit from the tracking like me, I would wait for that update before clicking buy on this drone. When it boils down to it, I think you really need to take stock on how much you plan to use this and what you want it for. Well, physically flying pretty much every DJI drone, but especially one with as much optical avoidance tech as the Mavic 3, is really easy. Actually using them to get amazing footage is a whole nother ballgame. For example, I've had this Mini 2 for, 4 to 6 months now, and I still kind of suck with it. Well, you can look at some of the footage I used in the Polestar 2 video to get an idea for it. There's no doubt that the Mavic 3 footage may have looked a little cleaner, but I think the real problem is that I just need to practice with this more. It's a drone, it's fun, but it's also a tool and you need to learn it. So for most people, I think this leads me to still recommend the Mini 2 since A, you don't need a license to fly, B, it can fit in your pockets and travel anywhere, and C, it still captures pretty great footage unless, you're some kind of drone aficionado. So it will likely take you a while to master drone flying, and by that point, you'll definitely know if you want to drop a few $1,000s on whatever flagship Mavic is out at that time. I'll also mention that just the Mavic 3 is a lot of gear. While I can pack the Mini 2 and its controller in my jacket pockets, the whole setup for the Mavic 3 is like a little more inconvenient. You're lugging it around in a backpack and it's heavy to use while you're hiking all day. And that's it. If you have any questions for me, don't hesitate to reach out at @TheBradFat on Twitter, and make sure to follow Mobile Syrup everywhere too for just a huge range of tech and gaming coverage, from articles to interviews, reviews. You slap tech into it, on it, or around it, and we're there. Peace. I'll see you guys next time.